Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for some thoughts on some leaks. Apparently, there are some semi-fresh Kendrick Lamar leaks that have been bumping around the internet for a little bit now. I have been getting a lot of asks to give some takes on them. Prayer, Somebody, Gotta Love Me, which actually features Baby Keem, who, from what I understand, is Kendrick Lamar's cousin. But pretty interesting. Pretty interesting that we have tracks here, which I'm sure will vary in style and quality to take in. And I don't know, just see if we're hearing maybe a rough idea that could develop into something else into the future. And hey, even if these tracks end up being leftovers of some sort, Kendrick has had a pretty fantastic discography so far. I'm sure his spoils across each creative war in his discography thus far will be enjoyable to listen to, at least to some extent. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor in this video, really quickly, the good people over at The Ridge. They make these nifty, awesome metal-plated minimalist wallets that fit nicely in your front pocket. Replace that disgusting bulky leather wallet today with this bad boy. And use promo code MELON when you hit the link down below and get 10% off. And that's all you got to do. Let's start off these tracks because we have several to go through, beginning with the song Prayer, Ba-Bam. Okay, like that one quite a bit. First off, instrumental, killer, fantastic blend of 70s funk and soul, really elegant, gorgeous. The pianos and the chord progression are beautiful. Like, this is one of the most beautiful instrumentals Kendrick Lamar has ever been on top of. But really what ends up stealing the show is Kendrick's lyricism and the narrative. The whole thing works essentially in three parts. The first two pretty much being point of view narratives. The flow is very laid back, so there's that emphasis on that storytelling and making sure you feel every word, every thought, every sentence. The first verse seems to be from the standpoint of Michael Jackson, which at first might throw you off because Kendrick says from this point of view that he was born a certain year, which is not the year Michael Jackson was born, but I think he's referencing instead the year almost that he was born in the public eye. And yeah, he sort of builds Mike up and talks about his iconography and talks about his background. And then he begins to creep in these thoughts and these points about how flawed of a human being he was, which I thought was certainly refreshing considering that his views and lyrics expressed on Jackson in the past have not been super nuanced and have come off a little one-sided. And then in the second verse, he talks about MLK in a similar light, talking about the significance and historical importance of his I Have a Dream speech, and then going on to talk about the man's infidelities. And they're two very well-written and moving verses. Whether or not the messaging and concept of this track as a whole works, I think really depends on your own point of view, but like the intentions of what he is attempting to do here are very clear. Then with the third verse, which I think Kendrick uses to try to tie things up, he begins giving what I assume are just his own thoughts on artistry, morality, creativity, critics. I think maybe it's a little over the top on his part to paint the stakes as being like the same between Michael Jackson and his detractors, MLK and his detractors, their flaws, their triumphs, and whether or not Kendrick or other musicians today are being too harshly critiqued or boxed in by not just professional critics, but by people in general who have an opinion. Which again, I don't think those things are entirely analogous, number one. And number two, I mean, Kendrick Lamar, the critics love Kendrick Lamar. For sure, all artists out there have gotten negative criticism, but for the most part, Kendrick Lamar is beloved, respected, by fans and critics alike, to the point where I think people even read a little bit too much into a lot of what he does and see things maybe that aren't there because they assume everything he does is so genius. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 layers to it, which at the end of the day, it's art. It's open to interpretation. You're free and entitled to interpret Kendrick's stuff any way that you would want to. And what I'm saying in this video is just my interpretation. It's just my opinion, y'all. But I do think Kendrick puts forward some decent points here in terms of separating the artist from the art, separating the flawed human being from what might be their best moments or their well-intentioned thoughts and ideas. And finally, I love the ending words of the track where he says, just so you know, the earth is just a rock without the voices of art. Sincerely yours, which is a sentiment that I entirely agree with. And the sentiment as well in the track that, look, just because somebody makes some great art does not mean they are a moral person. Don't expect the highest echelons of morality from that individual, especially when they're in a position where they are so tempted and given so much power and influence. On top of it, these people, these celebrities, figures, whether they be in the fields of politics, art, what have you, they're not gods. They're flawed individuals that make bad decisions. Insofar as Kendrick is making that point, I entirely agree, and I think this track is sort of an effective vehicle for that idea, and a beautiful one. While it was a little rough around the edges, sonically and recording-wise, I guess I expected that, but with some more grooming, I mean, to me, this track sounds like ready for an album. Loved it. Very impressed with it, and wouldn't be surprised and would enjoy hearing it in some other capacity at some point in the future. So there you go, Kendrick Lamar. Prayer. Next track I want to take on here is Kendrick Lamar, Somebody. Let's give this one a listen and see what it has to offer. Okay, Somebody. This track was a lot rougher, a lot shorter, a lot more to the point, and thematically I caught a lot of the same ideas as I did on the song I just listened to from a more introspective perspective, I suppose, with Kendrick, I guess, talking about this rock in a hard place that he's caught in, the fame, the attention, all of that, and the temptation, the negatives, the downsides that comes with, which, again, is something that he has spoken about at length before, whether it be on TPAB, whether it be on Damn. But it seems like, at least in this moment, lyrically and vocally, it's potentially getting to him a little bit more. Like he seems like, I mean, he literally says on this track he'd rather be somebody else. Now, this kind of thing, you can't just hand over what Kendrick Lamar has built over the years. You can't just give it to another artist and be like, okay, now it's you. This sort of vision and expectation of Kendrick and presumption of Kendrick is going to follow him probably for the rest of his life and the rest of his career. The fact that he continues to make music that is this personal and conscious and thoughtful is probably only going to raise those expectations higher. I'll say that the vocals, the rapping, and the singing both come off very dejected. The mix is very rough. I would say it's even rougher, like the batch of sounds here are more skeletal and not very finely mixed in such a way where the quality is worse than like Untitled Unmastered. You know, not to say it's unlistenable, it's certainly listenable. I mean, not the best Kendrick Lamar song I've ever heard, but certainly emotionally impactful because of what I think he's putting out here. Next, we have the song Gotta Love Me. Let's give this a listen and see what Kendrick is offering here. Ba-bam. I gotta say, I think this is my least favorite of the three. I thought the beat kind of lacked texture, groove. The eerie synthesizer layers were kind of cool, but outside of that, I thought the pacing was really underwhelming. Kendrick Lamar's delivery was very subdued to the point where I thought it took the wind out of the track. Maybe a song this low-key would sound more interesting in the midst of a track list where it's kind of an interlude or a low-key moment building off of something else or a narrative, potentially. And I am seeing a bit of a narrative theme amongst all of these tracks so far. Let me also note, this is the moment where Baby Keem came through and appeared on the track. And he kind of popped on for the very low-key refrain on the hook. I wouldn't say he kind of made or broke the track, though. I think Kendrick could have easily done this, chorus, and it would have been roughly the same in terms of outcome. And given what he's been saying so far about anguish, temptation, materialism, not just on these tracks, but in his career at large. This is a song where he is really going down that road of self-indulgence and saying, I've done this, you gotta love me, I have this, you gotta fuck me, I get sassy, I have this, I flex, but it's very low-key. It's very depressed. Clearly for him, all of these feelings are coming from a place of darkness and a place of void filling. I get the intention. I get the message. I get the angle that he's going for. I just feel like he has more or less expressed these thoughts already on more compelling tracks. The more I think about it, it's kind of funny how earlier he was talking about, oh, the critics, you're penning us in, you're doing this, you're doing that. And it's like, dude, you are literally circling around. I'm not telling you to rap about this stuff. These are not the themes I'm telling you to address again and again. Like, honestly, not that I wish for you to move on to something else. That's not what I'm begging for. That's not what I'm asking. So yeah, gotta love me. It's okay. Didn't blow me away or anything. Maybe in the fully polished version, it would be more exciting. But as of right now, as it currently stands, the basic ideas, the baseline concepts that are being delivered here aren't exactly blowing me away. But generally, I thought these tracks were intriguing. Let me know what you thought of these tracks. Did you love them? Did you hate them? Why? What do you think I should review next? You're the best. Anthony Fantano. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano. Kendrick Lamar. Forever.